The planet of Durnath was not kind. Its skies were a dull, dusty orange, and the twin suns rarely broke through the heavy haze. The cities that once thrived here were now skeletal ruins shattered by time and war. Buildings leaned at strange angles, streets were clogged with debris, and the air carried the smell of old oil, burned circuits, and dry dust. Life on Durnath was harsh, but for Lyra, a young blind alien girl, it was all she had ever known. Lyra's body was small and frail by most standards, but her other senses were sharper than any sighted being could imagine. Her skin, pale with a faint shifting shimmer, could feel even the smallest vibrations in the ground. Her ears could pick up the faintest hum of power running through broken machines. Her nose, delicate and precise, could sniff out the tiniest trace of water, food, or chemical residue. To anyone else, the planet was dead, barren, and unwelcoming. To Lyra, it spoke in 1,000 subtle ways. Every morning, before the suns fully rose, she would set out with her sack strapped across her back, moving through the ruins of the old city. She collected what she needed to survive: bits of metal to scrape together into tools, discarded containers to hold water, and occasionally spoiled rations that still had some sustenance. To her, everything had a purpose. Even the broken, useless scraps could be turned into something that helped her live another day. She had learned the rhythm of the city over the years. The loose tiles in the street clinked differently than broken glass. The wind carried signals from the far-off towers where old machinery still hummed faintly. She could tell which heaps of trash might contain food and which were only dangerous shards waiting to cut her hands. Lyra's life was lonely, but she was never truly alone. She had friends of a different kind: stray animals, small robotic drones left abandoned by the previous inhabitants, and the occasional wind-carried whisper from the ruins. She had no family. None of the other blind children on the planet had survived past infancy. She was alone, but in her solitude, she had grown strong, intelligent, and alert. One morning, as the first pale light of the twin suns spilled across the broken streets, Lyra moved cautiously along a familiar path. She had heard a distant vibration, something unusual in the city. Her pace quickened slightly, careful not to trip over the twisted metal jutting out of the ground. She reached the edge of what used to be the main spaceport, a place long abandoned and considered dangerous. Broken spacecraft lay strewn across the tarmac, their engines cracked and panels peeled back. As she stepped closer, Lyra felt something strange. Another being. Someone was crouched among the debris, moving carefully but deliberately. Lyra froze for a moment, unsure whether this was a threat. Most living beings on Durnath had left long ago. Encounters with strangers were rare, and strangers usually meant danger. But there was something different about this one. The being spoke softly in a language Lyra recognized only partially. "Hey, do you know what these are?" Lyra's head tilted. The vibration of the voice was gentle, curious, not aggressive. She guessed the answer. "Food?" The figure chuckled. "Not exactly. These are machines, but they're valuable." Lyra's fingers brushed across a small metal object the stranger had lifted. She felt its edges, its shape, its weight. To her, it was just another scrap of metal, but the stranger held it as though it were priceless. The human, because she recognized him as human from stories of old explorers, spent the next hour showing her pieces of trash that had hidden potential. Broken containers, shattered circuits, bent tools. Things Lyra had ignored countless times before. He explained slowly and carefully how these could be repaired, combined, and even used to make something entirely new. "See this?" he said, holding a jagged metal panel. "It looks like scrap, right? But with some work it can become a power shield or part of a new machine. To someone like you it might seem useless, but in the right hands." He gestured at her, smiling. "It becomes treasure, treasure." The word rolled over Lyra's mind, unfamiliar and strange. She had never heard it before. Her world had only ever contained survival, hunger, and danger. Treasure was something she didn't understand, but the curiosity it sparked in her was immediate and strong. For the rest of the day, Lyra followed the human through the ruins, touching and learning. She discovered that the jagged piece of metal could be shaped into a sturdy container. Broken wires could be twisted together to carry power from one small device to another. Even a cracked glass tube contained chemicals that could purify water. Things she had always thought were worthless were suddenly alive with potential. As the suns dipped toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the twisted cityscape, Lyra's mind raced with possibilities. She had spent her entire life scavenging merely to survive, but now she began to see that survival was only the beginning. These scraps could build, could create, could even help others. Perhaps she thought she could transform not just her own life but the lives of others in this desolate world. The human, whose name she learned was Alex, packed his finds carefully into his own bag. He looked at her with a mix of amusement and respect. "You've got a good touch, Lyra. You notice things others miss. With a little guidance, you could change this whole place." Lyra's fingers tightened around the scraps she had collected that day. She did not fully understand what Alex meant, but the feeling inside her was undeniable. It was hope, something she had never truly known before. Over the next few days, Lyra and Alex worked together. She learned to identify which items were truly valuable and which were only distractions. She learned to follow the subtle hum of old circuits, the weight of materials, and even the faint taste of chemicals to know what could be useful. Her life, once solitary and repetitive, began to take on structure and purpose. Each day brought new discoveries, new challenges, and new excitement. One day, while they were exploring a collapsed factory, Alex showed her a broken drone. "Most would throw this away," he said. "But look closer." Lyra traced the wires and panels with her fingers. The drone was small, fragile, and battered, but she felt its potential. The careful arrangement of parts, the power storage, the controls. Alex guided her hands, showing her how to reconnect wires, repair circuits, and bring it back to life. When the drone finally whirred and lifted slightly off the ground, Lyra gasped in delight. She realized that her life of scavenging had not been meaningless. It had been preparation. Every day of navigating ruins, feeling debris, and understanding the subtleties of objects had trained her for this moment. She could transform trash into tools, tools into machines, and machines into something remarkable. For the first time, Lyra felt that she had power, not physical power, but knowledge, skill, and intuition that no one else on Dernith had, and she had a partner who could help her unlock it. Alex's presence was steady, his guidance patient, and his knowledge vast. Together they could turn the forgotten ruins into something alive again. By the time the twin suns had set completely, leaving the sky a dark shade of violet, Lyra sat among the piles of objects she had once considered mere scraps. She held a small container she had repaired, a glowing crystal she had discovered, and a piece of circuitry Alex had taught her to recognize. To her, they were more than objects. They were possibilities, stepping stones to a future she had never imagined. Lyra's life had changed in ways she could barely comprehend. From blind scavenger to a student of treasures hidden in plain sight, she had discovered that value was not always obvious. Sometimes it required a new perspective, an understanding that even the smallest, most overlooked things could hold immense power, and though she still could not see, Lyra's world was brighter than it had ever been. Every vibration, every hum, every texture told her a story that she could shape, influence, and perhaps someday master. For the first time, she understood that her life on this harsh, abandoned planet could be more than mere survival. It could be extraordinary. The days after Lyra met Alex passed in a blur of discovery and learning. Every morning she left her small dwelling among the ruins with renewed purpose. The city that had once seemed lifeless and barren now held possibilities she had never imagined. Broken machines hummed faintly, waiting for her to touch them. Bent wires could be straightened and connected to power circuits. Containers that once held nothing could now carry water or precious materials. Lyra's hands moved quickly and confidently over the objects. She had learned to feel the difference between something that was truly useless and something that simply needed repair. Her blind eyes could not see the changes she was making, but her other senses guided her. She could hear the subtle vibration of a powered circuit, smell the faint chemical residue of a usable fuel, and sense the precise weight of a tool that had potential. Alex watched her with quiet admiration. He had traveled across dozens of star systems, seen countless abandoned worlds, and met many beings with extraordinary abilities. But Lyra's intuition and sensitivity were unlike anything he had encountered. She could sense what even advanced sensors could not detect. "Try this," Alex said one morning, handing her a small metallic frame. "It's a shell for a storage drone. The drone will carry materials around, save you trips, and help keep your work organized." Lyra ran her fingers along the frame, noting the imperfections and the points where wires could be attached. She nodded, her mind already forming a plan. She attached small motors, carefully linked circuits, and gently fitted a power core. The frame shivered slightly under her touch, then stabilized. When she activated it, the little drone hovered steadily, lights blinking softly. "It's perfect," Alex said, smiling. "You made it better than it was before." Lyra felt a warmth inside her she had never known before. This was more than survival. This was creation, innovation, and purpose. She realized that the objects she had once called trash were not simply pieces of metal or plastic. They were tools, machines, and treasures waiting for someone who could understand them. Word began to spread among the scattered travelers and scavengers in the sector. Ships from nearby systems landed on Durnath, curious about the blind alien girl who could see potential in everything. Some were traders, some were explorers, and some were scavengers hoping to profit. They brought rare materials, tools, and knowledge, and in exchange, Lyra offered items she had repaired or improved. She quickly learned the rules of trade, not through sight but through touch, vibration, and careful listening. The rhythm of transactions became another language for her. She could sense the weight of a mineral sample, the subtle difference between high-quality and low-quality circuitry, and the reliability of a piece of equipment. Her reputation grew, and soon even beings from systems far beyond Durnath sought her guidance. One day, Alex brought her a device unlike anything she had seen before. "This is a translator," he said. "It will allow you to communicate with beings who speak different languages. It will help you understand the materials, the tools, and the markets better." Lyra felt the device, cold and smooth, and connected it to her own senses through the small interface Alex had prepared. The first words she heard were strange, mechanical, and foreign, but slowly she understood them. Each sound became a color of meaning, each vibration a sentence. She could converse with traders, explain the value of materials, and learn new techniques to repair and create. With the translator and her newfound skills, Lyra's operation began to expand. She transformed the ruins around her into a workshop and learning center. Broken machines were repaired, dust-covered streets were cleared, and small lights glimmered in the night. The planet, once silent and forgotten, hummed with activity and possibility. Lyra discovered that her work had more than economic value. She began to repair old water filters, energy collectors, and shelter modules, helping other beings who had been stranded or struggling on Durnath. The planet's harshness became a challenge she could overcome, and the creatures and travelers around her found hope where none had existed. One afternoon, as the sun set behind the jagged skyline, a small group of traders brought a rare crystal they said could amplify energy output. Lyra felt it carefully, sensing its vibrations and energy potential. She knew immediately how to use it to improve the power grid she had been assembling from discarded energy cores. The process was delicate, but under her fingers the crystal was connected, circuits aligned, and the system activated. Light spread through the city, humming gently, signaling a small but powerful change. "This is incredible," Alex whispered. "You've turned the ruins into a city again." Lyra smiled, though she could not see him. She felt the hum of energy, the subtle vibrations of life returning to a place that had once been dead. She had transformed her world, not by leaving it, but by understanding it, embracing it, and seeing its hidden value. The changes were not without challenge. Rival scavengers tried to take what she had found. Small storms damaged some of her constructions, and technical failures forced her to think quickly and adapt. But each challenge only strengthened her skills. She learned to repair faster, create redundancies, and anticipate problems before they happened. Her reputation grew not just as a trader, but as a problem solver, an innovator, and a guide. Over time, Lyra realized that the greatest treasure she had discovered was not the materials or the machines, it was herself. She had learned to trust her instincts, to see potential where others saw waste, and to transform the world around her. Alex remained at her side, teaching, advising, and sometimes marveling at how a blind alien girl could create what others thought impossible. Lyra also discovered the joy of teaching. Younger beings who had grown up on Durnath or had been stranded there began to come to her for guidance. She taught them to feel vibrations, to sense energy, to understand the value of objects. She showed them that survival was only the first step, that with creativity, knowledge, and vision they could build, improve, and thrive. By the time the twin suns rose one morning, casting long shadows across the city of lights, Lyra walked through her workshop, touching the walls, feeling the hum of machines, and listening to the chatter of the beings she had helped. Durnath was no longer a planet of ruins. It was alive with energy, commerce, learning, and hope. She paused beside a small drone hovering nearby. Its lights blinked softly, reflecting the energy flow she had restored throughout the city. Lyra ran her fingers along its smooth surface, feeling the vibrations of its circuits and the precision of her work. She realized then that the human who had shown her the value in the trash had done more than teach her about machines. He had opened her mind to possibility, potential, and vision. Lyra's world was no longer just survival. She had found treasure in the most unlikely of places, trash discarded by others, overlooked by the world. She had learned to see with her hands, her ears, and her mind. She had discovered that value was not always obvious and that sometimes the greatest treasures were the ones hidden in plain sight. As night fell on Durnath, Lyra stood at the edge of her workshop, feeling the gentle vibrations of the city she had built. She listened to the soft hum of machines, the murmur of conversation, and the occasional sound of a ship landing nearby. Her heart swelled with pride. She had done something extraordinary, not just for herself, but for everyone around her. The stars above, faintly visible through the haze, seemed to shine a little brighter that night. Lyra, blind though she was, could feel their distant energy, their silent promise of adventure, possibility, and future discoveries. She understood now that treasure was not merely objects. It was knowledge, creativity, courage, and vision. And at the center of it all was a blind alien girl who had turned trash into treasure, despair into hope, and a desolate planet into a thriving world. Alex stood nearby, silently proud, knowing that Lyra's gift was something no human or alien had ever truly seen before. Together they had begun a story of innovation, resilience, and wonder that would echo across the stars. Durnath, once silent and abandoned, now whispered with life, energy, and promise. And Lyra, who had once scavenged for food among the ruins, now held the greatest treasure of all: purpose, vision, and the knowledge that even in the darkest places, brilliance could be found.